Hello from Mexico City. I got here last night and met my boyfriend. We'll be here for the next 5 days or so. You can see the reflection of the city. I'm sitting on the balcony of the apartment that we're staying at. I love Mexico City. It's one of my favorite cities. I've been here almost 10 times by now. Primarily, we decided to come here so that he could get some dental work done, and we thought we'd just make a trip out of it. I also got a cleaning myself. So today's video, I want to talk more about how I got to where I am in my life, that I decided to take a non-traditional career path. I've worked for myself for the better part of 15 years, over 15 years, and I can't imagine my life any other way, even though I have tried. I really have tried to do things differently, because it's not always an easy path, but it definitely is the path for me. So not only having this lifestyle gives me the ability to come to Mexico City if I want to for a few days, because I don't have a boss that gives me paid time off, but I do this because it really was the way my career and life led me to be here. So out of university, which was 18 years ago now when I graduated from university, I got a job working for a nonprofit cultural exchange company. And my role was to travel to different cities, different communities for 4 to 8 weeks at a time, and set up the city for the group of students that were in the cultural exchange program. These students embarked on a 6-month world tour, where they would stay in each community anywhere from 3 days to a week at a time. They would live with host families, do community service work, and perform a musical show all about how and why different cultures from all over the world can make a difference together, and how cross-cultural exchange benefits everyone. We called it sort of a mix between Glee and the Peace Corps. That's a pretty accurate way to explain it. So right out of college, as a 22-year-old, I would get dropped into these communities where I was expected to figure out a whole bunch of things. We went through some training prior, but once you are on the ground in a random town that you've never been to, like St. Joseph, Missouri, or Globe, Arizona, these generally small towns, you had to figure things out. And so oftentimes we did have a sponsor contact that would help get us get us some momentum in terms of meeting the right people and getting the right contacts to get things set up. But sometimes we didn't have a sponsor, and there was one time I was dropped off in a town near Washington, D.C. Excuse me. I was not provided a host family because it was a city that was decided on last minute. Literally, I was picked up by someone from headquarters and said, okay, we are likely going to drop you off somewhere near the DC area. It's going to be likely this town. If they can accommodate us for a show around these dates for their auditorium, then that's where we're going to drop you. And lo and behold, they were available for us to have a show. I was dropped off in a hotel and told, so since we don't have any sponsors here, because we're just dropping you off, we are going to give you the ability to stay in this hotel for a few days, but really you need to find yourself your own host family, because we stayed with host families everywhere. Not only did the students stay with host families, but us on staff stayed with host families as well. So I was given a phone number list from headquarters of all of their alumni who had done the program previously. And I just started cold calling everyone on the list. Eventually got a hold of an older gentleman whose daughter had done the program, 20 some years ago at that point. And he said, okay, well, I told him the situation. He said, come and meet me at my office tomorrow. We'll see what we can do to help you. Next day, I show up to his office and he said, my wife and I are willing to be your host family for the next, it was going to be about 8 weeks that I was going to be there. So I moved into their house that day, and they housed me for those 2 months while I set up the city for the students to arrive. And this role, as you can imagine, was very fly by the seat of your pants. I learned skills that I never would have had the ability to learn in a traditional corporate job or office job. I did not have a manager there that was telling me what to do or how to do it. I did have support from headquarters in that they, if I really needed something or if I had questions, they could help me answer, but they were not on the ground. I was the one that had to get to know the community. I was the one that had to find strategies to find host families, to get press into newspapers or other marketing techniques to get the word out about the show. I had to find community service partners by calling nonprofits and meeting with community leaders. I learned to be as scrappy as possible. I would ask to go speak in classrooms at schools to talk to students about their interest in their families being host families. I would go do the same at churches and Rotary clubs and all sorts of clubs. And at that same town, I walked into the publisher of the local newspaper and asked to meet with the head publisher, the head editor. And they were like, do you have an appointment? I said, no, I don't, but I'm from this organization. We're bringing a group of international students here. They'll be performing a show, and I would love to see what the newspaper can do to get the word out about our show. They invited me to come back later that day to meet with the editor, the publisher, and I somehow walked out with a sponsorship for a bunch of ads that they would run for our show. These were not skills that I could have trained for any other way other than being thrown into the fire. And that is how I have operated at my best, is when I've been thrown into the fire from there on forward. So I did this role for about a year, traveling to different communities, doing this job. Each one was challenging in its own way. I would learn and iterate from each community I went to, but every city, community, town had its own nuances. Some towns were harder to find host families because maybe the community was a little more closed off around hosting international students, perhaps. Another town, we struggled with marketing to get people to come to the show because there was maybe too much going on in the community. So it was always just a challenge in its own way, and I learned so much. I learned that I could really do anything that I put my mind to, even with the littlest of resources. All my city stays for the students were successful in all the ways. I was always praised for the work that I did. And again, I was 22 coming out of university doing this job. So when I decided to leave this job, I thought at that point, okay, I need to get a real job, be somewhere stable, be somewhere in the long term. And I moved back to Colorado, where I was born and raised, and found a job with a nonprofit that really seemed like the perfect role for me. I was going to be working in some sort of social cause. I was going to be using my skills that I had learned in events, setting up logistics, doing all that, and I would be able to apply it more formally within an organization. I also had learned all these other skills as well, but events was the one I would now primarily focus on with this role. Well, that role turned out to be just such a hard left turn from what I was doing in the role that I had prior with the cultural exchange company, that it was so jarring for me. And it was arguably so much easier of a role because I had to set up things like receptions and dinners, things that were very easy, so to speak. But I struggled with having to do work that was so restrictive and constrained. And also I had to answer to a manager who I actually really enjoyed, but we had to really answer to several boards. As if you ever work in nonprofits, you oftentimes have to really interact with a board of directors, and there were a couple boards that my role had to interact with, and there were so many politics within that role that I was just not used to. I was used to forging ahead in the work that I would have to do without needing to consult the higher ups. Like, I was trusted to make things happen in the community I was in, and now I was having to answer to these board members that, because they were providing financial support to the organization, I needed to fall in line with that. So I really struggled in that role, and arguably did worse in the sense that I wasn't putting my best strengths forward in the role. Eventually, during the year of that role was when the market was doing really bad, the stock market, we had our big housing crash, and I was laid off at the end of 1 year of working at that role. And I felt at that moment, it was devastating when I got let go. I was also a relief in the end because it propelled me to where I am now in my life. But I distinctly decided I will never again let one entity, one organization be the sole provider to my livelihood, because this one organization was responsible for making sure I could pay my bills and that I could have food. And I really did not like that feeling of being solely dependent on one entity. So I really felt from that point forward, I need to be doing work where I can be more resilient, where I know where I will be able to answer to myself, and I will have more agency in the work that I do. And that really, also a bunch of other series of events also, but that was really the catalyzing moment that helped me to really decide I need to do work that is on my own in order to feel like I'm at my best. I think there's also something about I do my best work and my best strengths come forward when I am able to do work that's of a certain challenging level. And I don't mean challenging in the dealing with politics and dealing with organizational dynamics sort of way, but work that really asks of my strengths. I think that's the only word that really applies here. It really asks me to step up and be at my best. And I wasn't going to find that in any organization that I could see. So that's why I've been working for myself for the better part of my career now. For almost all my career, I did go back to one full-time stint that I'll maybe share about one day. And now I am continuing to do this work. I work with clients mainly for my income. But what's different that I want to do for this year is that in addition to working with my clients, I want to build a personal brand and to connect with an audience around this life, around choices in my life that I have decided to make. I hope that I can find others that really resonate with the path that I have decided to take. And I want to connect with the community and hopefully expand what I do in this work. Hopefully expand what I do for my work outside of just working with clients. So I think that's going to start with building more of a personal brand, talking to an audience here on YouTube, and maybe providing some offerings to customers, brands, people, and brands that really resonate with the work that I do and the principles that I am about. So that's what's going to be hopefully different about this year, is that I will be continuing to work for myself, but it won't primarily look like just working with clients, even though I will continue to do that. I still love doing that, but I want that to evolve. I want to push myself and to grow. So that is the catalyzing story of how I got here. And I'll also share other stories around how I got to where I am today, because it's definitely not a linear path. And I'm very happy about that. Excuse me. So if any of you have had a catalyzing moment that helped you realize that you needed to live or work in a more untraditional way, I would love to hear it. I would love to connect with you. And yeah, hope to share more stories very soon about this journey. I'm going to go enjoy Mexico City now.